Okay, hi everyone. I'm going to do an online demonstration of our perspective drawing here. Okay, so let's imagine you're sitting here at Kaitak. Now, the difference I've got here is that I've got a photograph, and I've blurred out one of our friends here. So I'm drawing on top of a photograph here, which is not what you will be doing, but it's just to show you how, if this is what you're looking at, how you would get started with a 1-point perspective drawing or a 2-point perspective drawing using a simplified version of some of the historical techniques we saw above. So, for example, one of the differences here with my photograph, which kind of comes back to the lecture, is that you can see that none of my verticals are actually vertical, because a camera doesn't give us a clean 2-point perspective image. It actually gives us kind of a curvilinear image based on how light is warped in the lens. And because I took this with a wide angle lens, we've got a lot of warping, especially in things close to us. But I'm going to first of all draw this as a 2-point perspective image because we're facing a corner, and that's kind of the most logical perspective system to use. The purpose of this is really just to show you how to set up the 2-point perspective. So I'm just going to make my lines here a little bit thinner. So if I was doing a 2-point perspective drawing from a scene like this, first of all, I'd start with some sort of vertical, basically where that corner is going to be. And because you can see this corner is nowhere near vertical, I'm just putting something kind of in between them. Then I'm going to, in this case, I'm just going to use the walls themselves to show you where the vanishing point on this photograph is. But the difference that you would have when you're drawing this yourself is that you would kind of have to choose where the vanishing points are, because you don't have a photograph and because your eyes are a little bit different to how a camera works. What you do is you'd actually put 2 vanishing points on your page. I'll show you what that would look like. Just let me finish these lines. So, if I'm to show you my vanishing points a little differently, I'll just draw I'll just draw a dot. So at the moment I put my vanishing points here. I'll make that dot bigger, hold on a second. I put a vanishing point here and here. Whereas on your page, what you might do is something like, say if your page is here, what I recommend you actually have is like your first line might be here, and you might just say, okay, one of my vanishing points is here and the other one will be here, because you kind of want the vanishing points sort of in line with each other. So actually, I think it will make more sense if I actually draw above the photograph. Then I can show you a little bit more cleanly how we would draw something like this in 2-point perspective. So I'm just going to draw up here. So I'll just get rid of that, some of this stuff down here. Just give me a moment. I'm just going to get rid of that. And then I'm just going to make a new layer, drawing 2, and pop it above there. Okay, so if I was drawing something like this in 2-point perspective, let me just, I'll get us a little box, and that will be our piece of paper. So let's say this is our piece of paper here. Forgive me for my very basic photoshopping. And then, okay, so first of all, if this was my piece of paper, I'd make a few simple decisions. I would put my vanishing points I'm going to make a very arbitrary decision. I'm just going to pop them here and here, level with each other, and then I'm going to draw a vertical line representing where that wall is going to be. Okay? Now, the next decision I have to make, which is also a bit arbitrary, is I have to work out where the height, how high this wall coming towards me is going to be. And what I like to do, I like to make it just a little bit lower, and just a little bit higher at the bottom, which pushes our wall back in space a bit, which means we can also draw a little bit of the ground and a little bit of the roof up here. So then I'm just going to connect some projection lines through to my vanishing points, and that's going to give us the receding planes of both of these walls. The final decision I'm going to make, and I'm going to make it very arbitrarily, is where to end my walls. Now this is a tricky example because we had this pole in the middle. I just took this, thankfully I took it when I was teaching on Friday. But I'm just going to end my first wall here and my second wall maybe right back here. Now, once I've done this, what I want you to do is basically, you can use perspective to make pretty much every remaining decision in the drawing. And I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to make my line a little bit thinner. I'll put it down to 5 pixels and I'll start drawing in black. And for example, let's imagine that we need to decide where all of these doors are on this wall. Well, when I was teaching here on Friday, we did a few fun tricks where I just walked up and down and I counted in my footsteps how long was this wall and what was approximately halfway. Now, even though this side looks a lot bigger than this side because of perspective, halfway was actually sort of back towards this door here. So you can see that we've got a much smaller space here and a much larger space here. So in our perspective, the way that we find halfway is we simply join the diagonals of our perspectival trapezium, and then we take a vertical line from that intersection of the diagonals, and that is our halfway point. Another thing we can look at is the height of the bottom of the doors actually projects all the way down from this wall that's facing us all the way down to the end, also meeting at the vanishing point. So, you know, if you were looking from observation, you could measure, you know, how many, as you know, with your pencil, you can measure this and count up how many heights here. Because I'm doing a demonstration, I'm just going to kind of guess a little bit. But let's say the height of our painted section is here. Well, then I'd take this, take it to my vanishing point, and there's our painted line. And I'm just going to now draw in black over my purple line so we can see that this is becoming our building. We get a vertical here. And we can also look at, okay, so if that's our halfway, from memory, I think the halfway of between here and here was about, what was it? Somewhere near where this fire extinguisher was, in between the windows. So to divide that space in half, we can do the same thing. We can divide this in half and this side in half. And we can draw another vertical. And this would be approximately where we'd be putting that gap between the two windows. So I think we said our first halfway was here, half, and our second halfway is something like here. So let's call this a quarter, which would mean halfway between here and here was probably somewhere, you know, we've got a door, another door, and a gap. So the gap, the sort of the 1/8 position is probably something like here. Okay, so now that we know that, now that we have this space here, let's imagine that the door here is halfway again here. So this would be, oh sorry, that's wrong. That should be 3/4 there. And right here, let's call this 1/8. And so what I mean is that from here to here is 1/8 of this entire space. And so we can divide that using our diagonals again. And basically what I'm trying to show you here, once I start drawing objects in, is that these divisions, using perspective, they solve the problem of how large and how small things should sort of change in scale relative to where we are. So if we've got we had our half here, and this is a quarter, and this is an 1/8. So that means that actually the middle of our door, believe it or not, will be quite a fair way here. This is our 1/8 here. So our door is going to be, you know, we've got that line there giving us the top of the door. So the middle of our door is, you know, there's more measuring you can do when you're on your actual drawing, but our door is going to be something like that. And I just did a guess there on that distance. You can do much more measurement yourselves, because basically the point of all of this perspective drawing is once you've got the wall set up, you pretty much just use the system itself to calculate what all of these distances should be. Now, let's say that this little line I've drawn here, this little box from here, represents this sort of landing or this little step for the door. The first thing I want to do is I need to draw that step in, but I don't want to just draw a random line like this. We actually use the perspective. So if we have a plane going this way, what we need to do is this line would actually, if I switch back to my purple for our projection lines, this line would actually go from here also to that vanishing point, and that top of the step would go from here to that vanishing point. And then to get the step itself, we take this vanishing point and just get however, you know, deep that step goes into the door, which would mean our door itself would pop up. I'll switch back to my black. Our door itself would be sort of boom, 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 and then we'd have a vertical going up here somewhere. I might just switch to purple because I'm not sure where the door's going to end. Door going up to here, and okay, it goes almost all the way up to the top. So let's say the top of our door is going to sort of come down something like that. And if we've got the top of a door...
Here are some results from the web.
Ooh, sorry, my phone is being activated by me talking. Okay, so I've got the top of my door there, which means the door is coming up here, and we can't... Okay, and then this is the other side of the door coming up vertically here, something like that. Okay. And then we won't be able to see that because this will be in front of it. Okay, so that should mean we'll have the front of that door section coming out and us seeing the inside of it. And here, this line will be going here. Now, this might all sound a little bit confusing, but it should all... and I'll remove my construction lines, is we found both the platform by which the door comes up, that step, and then we needed to see that this wall is in front of the step, but that this step also goes out to the vanishing point on this side. I'll bring back my construction lines and just turn their opacity down a little bit so we can sort of see a little bit more easily. There we go. And then we see this interior part of the door, and also because our eye level is here where the vanishing points are, we can also see the top. Now, what we can do using all of these divisions is we can continue by dividing up our space and finding all the doors and all of the windows and so on. The only thing I'd say at this point, depending on what you're drawing, is when we're starting out with perspective, it's much easier to draw things that are all at 90-degree angles to each other. So the pipes are fantastic, the windows are great. The doors, when they're open, are a little bit difficult, so I would actually leave them till last, once you've got a space that they can fit into. The last thing I'd like to show you is, before I move to one-point perspective, is just how we can also start to expand out into the floor and the wall. I'm continually pressing the wrong button here, that's what I wanted. Okay, so I'll just add back to my drawing the walls on the other side. So let me just come in here and just grab here. So I've got the rest of our corridor. Okay, so now I'll go to my construction lines, and I just want to show you how we can use the same construction lines from the vanishing point to describe what's happening down here and up here, which I think really shows us how useful perspective can be for building a sense of space. So I'm just projecting some lines out from this vanishing point here, and I'll take some, it should be a little more precise. I'll take some here, and now go from the other vanishing point here, 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 and I'll grab some on the other side of my building just to get the other footpath. And then I'm just going to do the same on the roof. So if I take this line, follow it up here, here, and here, and do the same from my other vanishing point, here, here, and here. Oh, and I'll take some sort of within the space. We're actually giving ourselves the spatial planes needed to find all the cool stuff like the pipes on the roof, the lights, and even the cracks in the pavement on the ground. So looking at the roof first, we could look at some of these pipes down here. So if I switch back onto my drawing layer, I can see that from this door, if I go to my halfway point, which was about here, oh no, that was my quarter way point, which would be, where did we say we had half? We had half here and a quarter here. Okay, so let's say I wanted to draw this pipe coming out and then these pipes here. Well, what I could do is, now that I've got this plane described here, so my quarter point is here, what I could do is sort of show how those pipes would be following. I might need to get a little bit smaller. I just did a little bend here because I think the pipe had a bit of a bend on it. How those pipes would also follow these construction lines here. So in reality, this pipe should, if I ruled it precisely, should also go back to that vanishing point. So that's pretty close. And then what was the form? It's a round pipe. I'm just going to draw it square just for a second, just to sort of show you the perspective, because it's a little bit simpler. If the pipe was square and coming down from the roof, we'd have something like this. And then here we'd be going down to that vanishing point. I should have made my line a bit thinner, that's okay. Down to the vanishing point and going back to this vanishing point this way. And same if we had something on the ground, you know, say there was like a straight line. Some of these cement lines here have join marks. I think there was one I think there's one sort of around the door somewhere there. So if I had a join mark there, I could also sort of describe the ground. I could show like a slab of cement or something like that, and that will be something that's sitting on the ground. Okay, so that's as far as I'll go for the 2-point perspective. But you know, I think it's really cool if you sort of take your drawing into as many spatial planes as possible. So rather than just walls, look at what's on the ground and what's on the roof, and you know, maybe there'd be some other pipes coming here. I don't know. I'm going to freehand draw this and probably screw it up a little bit. But basically, what all of this should be showing you is that once you've set up the first sort of, so that line, the first few lines, now I'm getting really obsessive. Once you've set up the first few lines, the perspective system becomes kind of like a template for showing you how to calculate what the proportion of almost everything else in your drawing. And the more you stick to it, the more the drawing will become kind of believable. But I also want you to remember just how radically different this is to the type of observational drawing we did last week, where we really had to look at how what we saw was the basis for what we draw. Where here, it's really the perspective system that tells us how to draw. Okay, so if this is 2-point perspective, how would I draw this in 1-point perspective? Well, the first thing is, if I was at Kai-Tak and doing a 1-point perspective, I'd probably not be facing a corner, I'd be facing somewhere like this. And given that this was the only the only photo I had from class last week, I'm going to use the same one. And I'm just going to call this one box, and I'm just going to cover up half of the picture so we can use the same one. So I'm just going to cover up here and pretend that it's not there. Just flood fill that with white. And okay. So now if I go back to my projection lines drawing, if we were doing a 1-point perspective drawing, we wouldn't have to decide, you know, have this issue of whether the vanishing points would be on the page or not. They'd just kind of automatically be there because there's only one and it's going to be in the center of our page. So I'll start by drawing a box just to represent what our piece of paper would look like. So I don't know, let's say our drawing is going to look something. Oop, okay, I'm going to need to put this layer on top. Then I should be able to draw my lines. Yep, so this is going to be our piece of paper. Something like that. And then we'd start with a vanishing point in the middle, because in this case, we're looking straight down a corridor. So same as last time, I'm just going to take some projection lines out from that point. They can kind of, at the moment, sort of, I'm just going to put a few there. And some of these, eventually, we're going to choose them as where we would start and finish our drawing. So I'm actually going to move that box just a little bit because I want to see, can I do that? Yes, okay, great. I want to see a little bit of that wall there because I'm going to use that for where we start our drawing. Okay, so this is easier to do in person, but it's kind of working okay on Photoshop. So let's say that our drawing starts like with this wall close to us, and then maybe we'd see the front of this pillar as well. So maybe the front of that pillar will be the closest thing to us. And in the real world, you know, our vision wouldn't be cropped by the camera. We could just look down. Okay, so if that pillar is facing us in 1 point perspective, the big difference between 1 and 2 point perspective is that in 2 point perspective, both walls are going off at an angle to us. Whereas in 1 point perspective, one spatial plane is parallel to us as a viewer, which means that their lines will be both horizontal and vertical. Whereas if you look here, there's no horizontal lines. Everything is going off to a vanishing point. We only have verticals. So okay, so let's say our pillar is going to be somewhere like on this kind of spatial plane, and it might start something like there. And then this might become the balcony going up there. And our wall is a little bit behind our pillar. So maybe the wall is going to start somewhere like there. And so maybe our wall is going to look something like this. We'd also have to work out where our drawing starts and finishes like last time. So I'm just going to sort of take a guess on this one. I might say something like this height. Here, I'm sort of looking at this little window space behind here. And, you know, I might have to adjust this a little bit, but let's just see how that works out. Okay, so if we've sort of done something like what we did last time, we've divided up our space and we've given it some beginning and ending points. So I'll just switch over to my, my black color and I'll draw these in so they're a little bit clearer. Maybe I'll just hide my menus. Can I do that? Can I hide my menus? Apparently not. Okay. Maybe make them smaller. All right. I thought tab hid my menus. Oh well, apparently not. Okay, so back to this. All right, so I'm just going to draw in, just for a little bit of clarity, lines that are, oops, should be a vertical line. Lines that are actually probably going to remain on our drawing. So horizontal and vertical lines, and then let's say this is going to be the pillar, top and coming from our vanishing point to here, vertical line, and then a line coming from the vanishing point. Okay, so if this is our pillar, I haven't drawn the top here because we've got that interesting thing where the top sort of, I think there's a little bit more architecture there I don't have in the photograph. But again, we can divide up our spaces. So let's say, how many pillars do we have there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think there might be like 5 or 6 of them. So again, we'd have to decide where the middle of our drawing is. So in the middle of this spatial plane, I'll go back to my construction lines so they're not taking over the drawing so much. So again, you know, we just start dividing up our space. So our halfway point is now here, and then halfway of this point is back here, and halfway of this point is back here. And similarly, we've got this plane here where, you know, we sort of knew, we already did some divisions on where things are, halfway up and halfway down. So I'll divide up my halfway point here. Same again. Get my vertical lines. So we've got half of this and half of this. So then, same as I did with the door before, you know, I think we said that our door, gosh, I can't remember what I did 5 minutes ago. What did we say? Like, that this was sort of 1/4, so the middle of the door was like 1/8. So the door would be sort of in the middle of this point. And our door would be something like, and again, you would be measuring this a bit more precisely, but our door would be something like in this space. Now I'd have to come from my vanishing point to find the base of the door. This will be now a horizontal line, and then finding the top of my door, I would go to my vanishing point and project that line out. Okay, I should even look at my reference. So the top of the door is very high, so I'd take a line from the vanishing point quite high up to find the top of the door, and project that line back up, project this front line back up, and it looks like we're going to see a little bit of the inside of that. Oh, maybe we won't. Hold on, because this would go here, this would go here, this would be a horizontal line. Okay, let's see if I've got that right. Let's switch back to my drawing, and so this will be the front of my door, and this would be the front edge of the door, the front awning of the door, and then we'll be seeing the step as a horizontal line, and then the roof plane as a horizontal line. So if I hide this, yeah, then so there's our first door would be something like that, and then we'd, you know, using our spatial divisions, we'd be dividing and adding in lots and lots more detail. And as you can see, if you look closely, there's lots of detail. Like, look at the windows. The windows both have, if I put myself on a really thin, like one, hopefully you can see this 1 pixel line here, even the windows have a front and they've got a side, you know. So if we were looking at this, I don't know, I'm just kind of making this up here, but we have like a box that has a side as well. So if you just draw a flat shape for a window, it'll look like a sticker. It'll look like something that's just sort of drawn on the wall. Whereas if you draw its spatial planes with that tiny bit of thickness, it makes everything sort of seem more real. Okay, and the same will be true for the columns. So, you know, if we've worked out where our columns are, let's say, so here we've got I'll go back to my projection lines, back to my purple, and put this up a little thicker again. So if we worked out that our halfway was here, our 1/4 was there, and our 1/8 was there, so I'll just put these, ooh, what have I done there? I have just drawn an enormous circle. That I did not mean to do. Okay, that's because I made my pixel line slightly thicker than 5 pixels. I made it about 5,000. Okay, so let me just draw this line again. Okay, so now we've got these central points. And we said there were 6 pillars, so 1, 2, 3, 4. So that means the middle line here would actually be the sort of the gap between 2 pillars. So I think, therefore, you know, we might have a pillar here. So if I was in the real site, I'd be able to measure it a little bit better. But just for argument's sake, I'm just going to sort of draw in 1 pillar and just show you kind of how we can start to use the system, much like we did with the door. So looking at this area, we've got this ledge here, and the bottom of the pillar actually comes below the ledge. So I'll stay on my projection lines, and let's say that the ledge might be about this high. So I'll take that to my vanishing point, and then, you know, our front of our pillar would be doing something like going across there, and the depth of the pillar is probably, if it's going off our screen, it might actually be, what I'm looking at is, you know, this top shelf here. the depth of our pillar might be coming from something like there, going there. So I'll start to draft this pillar in back on my drawing layer. So it might be something like here. That'll be a horizontal line. This will be a vertical line. Well, actually, this is going to be I said this was the middle of our pillar. So actually, the pillar itself might be something more like, if I go on this line, the pillar itself might be coming a little bit more forwards. Something like that. Take that vertical. Now some of these they won't stay black because I'll need to correct them. But just to give you an idea. And let me just erase that one line that I don't need. Make my eraser a little bit bigger. So I can grab this line and remove it. Okay, I'll just clean that up. And this line is not correct. Something like that, and I'll just fix these up now. Okay, so let's just get this cleaned up, just so you can see kind of what's going on. Okay, that's a bit better. And I'll just pop in the last defining plane of that pillar. Something like that. So now if I hide my construction lines again, we can see that we've got a pillar there and that little shelf, we could project back, further. It will be following that vanishing point line to wherever the next, I did not follow that very well, to wherever the next pillar is, and same at the front. We'd have something like that. Okay, so that's how our one-point perspective would work. All looking at this same sort of scene here. I'll just move this picture a bit further out now so we can see it all again. But okay, so that's a basic demonstration of how to get started with both the 1 and the 2-point perspective. I hope that's useful, and you're welcome to use this as a reference point, but also this is a simplified version of just how to get started with a perspective system that doesn't have, a whole lot of complication. I've added some links in our class notes to show how things start to get more complicated, but what I wanted to offer you here is a way to get started with a simplified version of 1 and 2-point perspective. And if you spend a good amount of time on your drawings and you just build in more and more detail, you'll see that you can end up with a wonderfully detailed drawing just by following these simple rules. Okay, thanks guys, and I'll see you in class.